Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cut and Splice. This is Matt speaking, and as usual, I'm joined by Gil and Jason. This time around, we are going to be discussing I Am Cuba, the film by Mikhail Kalatozov. Forgive me if we have any Russian viewers if I'm mispronouncing that. The 1964 Soviet film that was made in conjunction with the new Castro regime. Obviously, this was a very pro-American movie. Of course, they're speaking out of past. Yeah, this seemed to be an interesting film to look at, and it's definitely a movie with an interesting story behind it. But anyway, I'll let the guys weigh in, and then I'll respond and probably shoot them down.
Okay. So then you guys just saw this yesterday, right? Together?
Yes. My second time ever watching it.
Second time ever?
Yes.
Well, I think it might have also been my second time. It might have been my third, but I'm not sure if there was a different context that I watched it in. Did you watch it on the DVD or streaming?
Yes.
Oh,
no, we had the DVD here, and I was able to get it back to Matt as he returned back to his home. I don't know if you guys had watched this before me. I know obviously Matt had, but when for all of our loyal listeners who might know that the three of us used to live together just out of college and everything, we used to watch a bunch of movies all the time. This is a movie that Matt insisted that we watch at some point, and when the three of us sat down and watched it, that was the first time I had ever seen it, and last night was the second time I'd ever seen it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and one of the reasons why I think we're gonna do this is it took a while, but I many months, potentially over a year, that I was trying to get my my now late mother-in-law, who was battling ovarian cancer. She was born in Cuba. She's a Cuban, I guess they call them Cuban Jew.
I've never heard that term, but I like it.
Yeah, but in any case, it's basically Jews that I think her parents were like her family were like Holocaust survivors, and because there was quotas in the U.S., some Jews went to Argentina or Cuba, Latin America, and but then of course the revolution happened, and then they were like, okay, we're done with this, and they came to the U.S. via Mexico. But yes, and so I thought it would be interesting to watch it with her, and not even watch it with her, just to have her watch it and get her opinion, because she was essentially a child while this movie was made, or at least very young. This is probably right after she had like escaped, but at least like the revolution and everything, just in that context. It would be almost like the equivalent if somebody had made a movie about like Morocco in the 50s and I showed it to my dad or something. It'd just be interesting for them to see like this document of like a time that they might have a recollection of. And for the longest time, Matt's DVD sat in their house and was not going to be washed. And I was worried that maybe she wouldn't see it before she is no longer with us. So eventually, I gave up on the idea. I didn't want to push too hard, and I told her, "Oh, me and my friends would probably do a podcast episode." So I used it as an excuse to kind of take the DVD, but I felt bad about it. And then I was like, I mustered the courage to tell Diana and to her mother, Susy, was like, like maybe if you want, like me and Diana don't work Fridays, we can come on a Friday afternoon. We can sit and watch it with you, like all three of us. And she said yes, and we did that. And I think and our loyal listeners might know, because we brought this up several times, that one of the most memorable movie watching experiences that I've had was The Dark Knight with Jason in the Warner Brothers lot. I think the second most memorable one might be this one, for obvious reasons, because I mean it's something that I wanted to do, and I thought that she had trepidations about it because of the subject matter and because it's propaganda for the communist, you know, party. But whatever the reason is, I'm glad that she was definitely very game when we sat down and watched it, and it was like a really great experience, and I can even get into a bit more detail later. But yeah, I was like, this is awesome. I wish I can even convince my parents to do something along these lines. Like so let's just say, like, you know, she knocked it out of the park as far as like you know, making that experience memorable. And I hope on my part that the fact that I pushed for it was a positive memory that she got to, you know, have close to the end of her life.
I mean, without not going into too much detail, because I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but what did she think? Like, what was her takeaway?
No, she liked it. I mean, especially because we were talking about the technical aspects and all those things. Like I think she got a sense that it was really well made. There's like some crazy stuff, like like I almost like, did you do some research and like, you know, is this something that you do to like make me happy as a mother-in-law? Because that's the one thing I would say. She was the complete opposite of any stereotype you would have of a mother-in-law. She was the most like generous, beautiful, like you know, caring mother-in-law someone can hope for. And then like we watched this movie and I was like, oh, it seems like they're using a lot of wide lenses, sort of like Kubrick does. And it's like, what what are you talking about? Like, where do you know this shit? Like, and I kind of, like I said, like, yeah, that's very true. And he's my favorite filmmaker. You know, I kind of threw that in there. Like, I was like, either she heard it like years ago that he's my favorite filmmaker or something, or she's spying on me. But like, I was like, is that like some sort of like research you've done just to like tell me stuff that I would want to hear? So yeah, stuff like that. And you know, and also one other thing I would say before I forget later on, no, it's not spoilers or anything, but she was like looking at the photography and she's like, huh, they used the filter on this, right? Because the sky is too dark and the crops are too white. And I was like, yeah, there's like, they use a red filter for that when they shoot black and white sometimes for the contrast and stuff. And I was like, God damn it. Like, seriously, some good stuff, you know. I did not expect this to be this you know, this technical, engaging. Yeah, exactly. And of course, the main thing that she spoke about, which the questions Diana had, like about like, it was the university that's in there that's portrayed where the students are. She remembered that. She remembered a lot. It was like some stuff about like the president at the time before Castro took over. She was like, it was nice to hear her curse with initials. Like she was like, oh, Batista, you SOB. Because she remembers the time where he was a very hated, like, you know, and everybody wanted him gone, but nobody thought they would get a Castro in instead. But, you know, it's kind of like from lose situation. But that was like the big things. And then like all the landmarks for sure. She like, especially Diana was curious to know about that. So yeah, it was like a very, very positive experience. And yeah, and then I'll get more into detail about the movie itself. The main thing I was surprised that she asked me, is this movie about before the revolution or after? And I thought that parts of it was after, but it's pretty much all leading up to it, I guess. That's the plot of it, that it's like close to the end is when they get into it. But that was the only thing like that I forgot about it. But yeah, but that's enough about that. But we covered that now. So but yeah, like, so how was it for you two, especially watching it together? And you know, was there anything that you didn't remember the same way or that surprised you this time?
I mean, I think that Matt has definitely seen this a lot more than I have, but this time through, I mentioned to him as we were watching that I remembered the movie ending on the second to the last of the vignettes. Not and obviously once we started watching the last one, it like reminded me, and I was like, oh yeah, but like I was shocked, and that's why that's something I wanted to talk about more later once we start going into details. But that really surprised me because I very much remembered the big oneer at the end of the second to the last storyline being the end of the movie. Like I thought credits just rolled after that, you know. So that really surprised me a lot.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by the fact that it's because I recall the movie being almost like a jumbled vignettes that it's like all over the place. But then I'm like, no, this is actually very chronological. Like this is very like put together. Like even though it's different characters, it's all just veering to one direction, and it's very cohesive. I remember it being more chaotic than it is, and I don't know if that's like just maturity or what's the reason why I thought it was chaotic back then. But I don't know. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, it is kind of funny because I mean, as Jason alluded to, I've definitely seen it more times. I don't know how many at this point, but I mean, it's been probably at least close to a 10-year gap uh, uh, since my last couple of viewings. So I am kind of going into this, you know, a little bit older and a little bit further removed from previous impressions, and yeah, it is kind of interesting experiencing, this kind of this anthology film, and I mean, anthology films are already very few and far between if you just stick to American and or English language films. I mean, it's not all that common, especially when it's all one director and you're basically seeing a series of like four short films with all moving toward the same idea, but the Soviet take on it, and this is one of the reasons why I have been so interested in Soviet cinema for so long, is kind of looking at how that Soviet mindset results in different ways of handling these kinds of stories than you would expect in the West, and how there's a lot more of there's a lot more of a focus when it comes to Soviet cinema of characters being representative of a certain collective or a certain idea, rather than being though there's a lot of humanity to each of the characters. Well, I mean, mostly for to Enrique, I think, and out of the four like main protagonists of each story. But yeah, I mean, I think that I Am Cuba is a good example of that Soviet mindset of we're again, we are seeing the story of Cuba as a collective, rather than just focusing on rather than the more individual focused stories that we have in Western culture. But um anyway, I might have just been rambling. I don't know if that made any sense. Or
Yeah,
anybody else?
I mean, we brought that up several times, like the whole
Yeah.
Dunkirk and some other movies that have kind of borrowed the Soviet. Obviously, the battleship Potemkin and a lot of the famous older ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I made a stupid joke to Matt while we were watching about how Battleship Potemkin stole the the staircase from I Am Cuba, which of course is not accurate, but just because there's a massive staircase in the front of the college. Not staircase, stair. I don't know. What does he still call it a staircase if it's like a quarter mile long?
I'm not sure, but the the Untouchables, De Palma stole the staircase.
No, I know that's a direct homage too. I was just making a stupid joke because I saw the front of in the scene where they get to the college. There's just this massive white, like a stone stairwell leading up to a big building, and the first thing I thought of was Battleship Potemkin. I was just like, hey.
Well, and another big one is generally the whole thing of this movie, for people who haven't seen it, because we're in the review part of this talk, is that they do everything that's remotely, even humanely possible with the camera, like flying it all over the place and jumping into water. And one of the famous shots that Paul Thomas Anderson stole for Boogie Nights is following the bikini wearing woman, like walking straight into the pool and jumping in, and the camera just follows her in, like dips in. I'm assuming with an enclosure, but this the whole notion that like nowhere is safe, like the camera will go wherever it needs to go. That's kind of like the sense that the movie gives it, like everything is possible, like and I think some people like Paul Thomas Anderson and Scorsese and some others kind of borrowed some of that idea from this movie.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I was gonna say about my when I watched this with my mother-in-law. Because we had the DVD, it was kind of useful because I put on the special features where Scorsese talks for like 10 minutes about the movie and stuff, and it kind of gave that whole context, because obviously politically she is not aligned with it as we are, but yeah, it's like the whole idea of like the prowess and the technical aspect of it is what's really amazing, and the storytelling capability as well. That's just propaganda movies in general are interesting from that point of view historically, but yeah, it's a crazy movie making feat, and Scorsese often says it's like a movie where like if you're like low energy about like making a movie and you want to get inspired, just like pop that in and you're like ready to go. It's like, shit, if they did that, I can do at least half that much and have an amazing movie,
Yeah, it's probably a wise decision just to make it incredibly obvious at the beginning of this that while all three of us feel pretty positive and fondly about this film, that we don't really jive with its politics, obviously.
Yeah, but you have to separate the art from the artist.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
In some cases, it depends.
Well, I don't think that's ever a wrong statement. I just think that there are times when it doesn't matter if you separate the art from the artist, but you just don't feel like watching that artist's art anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Because here it's definitely all about the technical aspects of it. Like if the technical aspects were banal or like everyday, then this movie would not nearly have the same power or rewatchability that it does. I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
No, all I meant to say was that while I very much agree with that statement, not just about this movie, about all art in general, about the concept of like separating the art from the artist, I while I believe in that as a rule of thumb and as a way to live your life and to consume art and things like that, I don't think it's something that you have to like live and die by. I mean, if I'm not consistent with it, there's plenty of problematic artists who've made great art that I appreciate, but I'm sure if I thought about it long enough, I would find people who I just fail to make that separation with.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I try to watch. I think at some point back in film school, I think some of the Nazi propaganda stuff, because a lot of people were talking about like Lenny, what's her face, the director, that like there's some amazing movies, and like I was like, I don't know, this is like not convincing at all. Like, I think a movie that was convincing is like, I think I might have mentioned this at some point, but I watched like on a plane at some point on like my small device that I had, the old Arcos. I watched uh, Birth of a Nation, and I was like, I totally get this. Yeah, no, if I was like a white person at the turn of the century or whenever this thing came out, like of the turn of the 20th century, I was like, yeah, I could be convinced. Like kind of I can see kind of like the if somebody comes out with a movie that kind of reaffirms your views or your racism, it's very like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is like exactly the way it is. They're like scaring white people to go to the polls, and just so the black men can vote, and it's gonna screw the country, and it's like all these like things is like it's very convincing stuff, only for the fact that like it's just ridiculous. It's just like a very distorted point of view. But as you're watching it, you're like, wow, if I didn't have the context of like 90 years more history, I can see why this movie was banned at the time, because it's dangerous. As much as you want to be for free speech, some people can't be trusted, with like some propaganda, some types of propaganda. It's a complicated subject, and we don't have to like really like delve deep into it, but it's interesting. But the Nazi stuff, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so removed from it, but I was like, none of it is nearly as good as this, or as Birth of a Nation, for example.
I myself have never seen Birth of a Nation, but I have heard many things about that align with what you're saying, that it being as a work of propaganda type cinema, that it's quite good.
Yeah, and I mean, it was good enough that Woodrow Wilson had a screening of it at the White House, and I mean, Woodrow Wilson was actually an out and proud Klan member, so but yeah, little known fact about American presidents: Woodrow Wilson was the biggest piece of shit that ever made it to the Oval Office.
Biggest?
Yes, absolute biggest piece of shit who made it to the Oval Office. But anyway, digressing.
But I do wonder. I mean, I one thing that these two movies have in common, I'm Cuba and that one, is that it is like they're both amazing technical feat for their time. Because like Birth of a Nation is known for doing the intercutting and a lot of these techniques that like were pioneered in that movie. So that's what it is. Like when I saw the Nazi propaganda, there's some good cuts, some good angles, but nothing there was earth-shattering. They didn't reinvent film grammar in those movies, and I think that's really what it comes down to with these two examples.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the thing is that with I Am Cuba, I think a lot of it's like impressive even by today's standards. I mean, some of the shots that they pulled off in I Am Cuba would be a pain in the ass to pull off with a Sony A7S on a gimbal or something like that, and they did it with 35 millimeter cameras and sometimes with underwater housings. I mean, it's with pulley systems and like handing the camera off to different people, and I mean it's yeah, I mean, and I mean with a lot of it, I mean a good chunk of the movie was shot on infrared film stock too, which is not exactly easy to deal with with extensive use either. But yeah, it's still, I mean, there are a lot of shots in I Am Cuba that are absolutely astonishing by any standards even today. um but also, like, to the point of propaganda films, one thing that is that did kind of stand out to me. And also, like, it is interesting to understand that one of the reasons why Scorsese is such a big component in why we're even talking about this movie is that the movie was basically panned in both Cuba and in the Soviet Union. The Cubans apparently didn't like being stereotyped a little bit, and the Soviets thought that it was actually too generous to the bourgeoisie and everything under Batista, and so on and so forth. But um, you know, watching this propaganda film, this blatant Soviet propaganda film, uh, with my personal perspectives being the opposite, is kind of interesting. This stuck out to me more upon this viewing, in that I actually found myself sympathizing even more this time around, probably just because I've grown up a bit over the last few years with the really pro Castro people, the students, the people who are being deified and turned into these great heroes by the filmmakers than I probably did in the past. And it is just one of those things where you can kind of step back and look at the film as an examination of this kind of revolutionary mindset. And to an extent, I it was crossing my mind more this time around of you can understand that these people don't understand that they're just trading one dictatorship for another, and you can understand that these people that are the proletariat, they are supposed to be the working class, and they have been screwed over. And I mean, we know that Batista wasn't exactly Thomas Jefferson or anything being replaced by Castro. He was a dick too. And you can really sympathize with some of these people, even knowing all these years later that Castro was definitely not a step up. These people were already being put through hell and didn't feel like they were being treated properly by a government that they didn't feel like they ever wanted, and they deserved better. And you can understand the revolutionary mindset of these people. So I actually found a lot of the characters to be a lot more sympathetic this time around. I think I was a little bit less clouded in my judgment, and again, knowing what eventually came of it. But
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I realized you mentioned something to correct me. I think one of the reasons why the crops show up as very white is because of the infrared stock that they were using. I think that's one of the effects that it has. And then the dark
I figured Matt was going to talk about that at some point.
At some point, yeah. And then I agree about them being sympathetic. For sure. Yeah, we should get into the details, actually, like maybe rate it quickly and go into spoilers, because we've gone for a bit. But I was going to say something, but it's okay. Maybe I'll catch it in the second half. But yeah, my rating here from back when, this is back, I guess, when we first saw it years ago, I give it a 9. And I think I would probably keep that rating, or maybe like downgrade it slightly to an 8, but then because of my very good experience of watching it, I probably should keep it at a 9, just for that alone. But yeah, and that's mostly because of the combination of all those things. Is the fact that like the characters are very sympathetic, the politics are very complicated, and it's not evil in the portrayal. Yeah, it's definitely it's more about like the people. It focuses on the people. And then just the fact that the technical aspects of it are just so inspiring, or at least like aspire to do something special, almost like spiritual. with the camera. The camera is some sort of like a spiritual device, which very few movies do. You know, but a lot of people don't realize that the camera can be this device that like really elevates the storytelling, where they're often to like close up, medium shot, close up, medium shot. Like, no, it's actually, this thing is powerful if you use it the right way. So for that alone, I think it's worth like a 9 rating.
I just give it a solid 8. I really liked the movie a lot. Liked it the first time I saw it. Liked it more this time. It's a very, very beautiful movie in almost every way that a movie can be. It's just, I don't know. There's a few parts I find a little tedious, but overall, and you know, like Matt said, it's despite the fact that we know where things went historically with it, the movie itself is more focused on the people, and it's not like they weren't going through a lot of really bad stuff and not like they did know what was going to happen in the future. But yeah, I give it a pretty solid 8.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with a 9. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to say that this is a perfect film. You know, there are, I mean, it is, it, but I mean, obviously, a lot of it is one of those funny things where some of my gripes are probably intentional. Where, you know, I mean, even the Americans look strangely Russian. Uh, but I I don't know. I just it is definitely one of those films that has definitely had. I mean, despite the fact that I have already said that it's been several years since my last rewatch, at least before, you know, seeing it again last night. But it's definitely something that stood out to me as having tremendous rewatch value. And you know, the movie was made with such enthusiasm and care and artistry that there's I mean, there are certain shots, there are certain aspects of the movie that kind of skip your mind, not because they're unimportant, but because there's just so much going on that uh you know I mean, you remember some of those really big moments, and then you get to go through it again, and then, you know, you notice smaller, you notice more details, and you notice more nuance. And this movie is so well constructed from a cinematographic standpoint, and it's so well thought out and executed by uh, a really uh, I mean, phenomenal director and cinematographer who, I mean, these are two of the most talented image makers in the history of cinema worldwide. But yeah, it's a feast for the eyes, but it's also compelling drama, and I think it's a piece of history that anybody who's into cinema should expose him or herself to at some point. Like, but anyway.
It's high praise. Although it is a tough movie to find, I guess the only service that I found it on, I don't know if it's on the Criterion channel, but if it's not, the one service is like through libraries. There's this thing, this service called Canopy with a K, that you can get like free streaming service through public libraries, and apparently it's on there of all the streaming services that you can think of. So I don't know. I think, but I'm not sure. In any case, tough to find, but it's worthwhile seeking out.
It's on YouTube.
Oh, never mind then. That's easier. I mean, the quality is probably not amazing, but it's probably adequate.
Yeah, I mean, my copy is a DVD, so it's not exactly like we were watching it in 4K or anything either. So
yeah. The DVDs are
we were watching it on a Blu-ray player with a decent TV, so I mean, it should be upscaled a little bit.
Yeah, it depends. Maybe the YouTube one is not too bad. Okay, so spoilers.
Yeah.
I feel like we covered a lot of the movie already, but we can have a short spoilers section. Um, yeah. So one thing I was gonna say, maybe I can edit it later. In the beginning, it's just the one thing that I noticed that I forgot is because she was asking me when we were watching it, whether it's like before or after the revolution, and I really thought that some of it was before and some of it was after, but I didn't know that pretty much it's all just leading up to it.
Yeah.
Yes, that you never actually see the revolution happen. It's just all the stories that are related to it leading up to it. So I was surprised by that. I don't know why I didn't remember it correctly. I think you know what it is because there's the party stuff in the beginning. I was like, I don't know if that was like before or after or what. Like I didn't remember the context of it, and so yeah, I think that was the reason.
One thing that I put together this time, and I think it's possible that I realized this while watching it last time, but my memory of the movie was different in regards to this one aspect. But I remembered the movie as being more chaotic and more filled with short stories. Whereas this time through, I realized that several of the stories that I remembered as independent, like small short story type things, all strung together. And like I definitely remembered from the first time watching it the very long sequence at the I guess you'd call it a bar, or it's not really a brothel, but it's a bar where women are hanging out, where the wealthy people pick up these women, for sex and stuff like that. And I think it's because we start there, then they show the girl, and then they go into a flashback of her, basically more or less introducing her and the guy selling the fruit, singing the little song, the guy who's in love with her, and then go back to the party thing. Because of that, I think in my brain I kind of like separated the two or something like that. But it's like it's a long sequence. I definitely remembered the bar slash party thing going on, because it's so memorable. With the music starts up, everyone's dancing, and the camera is like so close to her the whole time, where you're seeing her go through this like chaotic journey in her head of like she doesn't want to be doing this, but she kind of needs to, kind of thing. Whatever. Anyway, point is, I remembered all that, and I remembered the stuff that comes later, with at her house and stuff like that. I This time through, I'm watching, I'm just like, oh, it's all one story. Like from the moment they start showing the businessmen sitting down talking and such, the two terrible American guys and whatever, and then like all the way to the end of that sequence and everything. I just and then same thing with like for instance the real big one with the college kid and everything. I totally remembered the Navy, the American Navy guys harassing the girl in the streets as like a separate story, not something that starts the story with the college kid. But it's much better, obviously, because the way I remembered it was like disjointed, kind of.
And you kind of wonder if like there's definitely a lot of symbolism there, like a lot of like characters representing, just like a character can represent a nation because of the whole Russian angle, the collective. There's also a little bit of like the fact that it's like Americans, abusing a girl. So Cuba is the girl, like
Yeah.
it's that's the symbolism there, that like America's trying to fuck Cuba.
Yeah.
And Cuba's like having none of this, because also America was responsible for the regime that was there and was not popular, which is why they wanted to overthrow it. It's like, if we're gonna have a dictator, it's gonna be at least somebody that, like, from the inside that we choose, like not like someone from the outside. So yeah, It's interesting, and I feel like it's the same way with the one that because it's not the same girl, right? That's at the club,
No,
and
different
takes
girl.
the guy to her like slum. I will say, like, that's the one thing, like a little bit, like the whole slum thing. I understand why, like she needed to. They wanted to go there to show the way she lives and
Yeah.
the poverty and all that, but I don't buy it story wise because you would think that like the guy's got a lot of money, the tourist. Why wouldn't he just take her back to his hotel? Why would he want to go there? That's the only forced thing in the whole movie where I'm like, narratively, this makes no sense. Like, there's no reason why this Canadian guy or whatever like would would go all the way to a slum just to have sex with someone.
I hear what you're saying.
But it's one of those things like we had to. They really wanted to show the slums, so that was the device they came up with.
Well, obviously they have to also, spoiler. They have to also get to the end, which is the guy who's in love with her walking in on them.
Yeah, exactly. But that could have been maybe she goes off to the hotel thinking that it's not where he sells his flowers, but he happens to be hanging out with his bros there or something, and he stumbles.
Yeah, there's a way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, all storytellers make mistakes, but I'm just saying, like it just that part felt like, why is he going so far for this? It kind of reminded me of I think La Dolce Vita too. Like there's like a scene there. There's something there where they go to like a really distant, clunky home somewhere. I think with one of his girls or something, and I'm like, and I don't know why it works better in La Dolce Vita, but here it felt very forced. It felt like, oh, they want us to see all this stuff because like for story, but really like why would he like not go to hotel? Maybe it's because he doesn't want to be seen there with like a prostitute. I'm not sure, but I don't know.
They didn't seem to imply that anybody else had a problem with the other guys doing it, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but not a big deal.
Two little things that I called out, not as problems, but just as observations during that storyline was like, I was like, Matt and I were watching this, and when they get to that part that you're talking about where they're almost at her house, her shack of a house, I was like, ooh, they're really in the ghetto now. I mean, they're like walking on stepping stones to not get their feet wet because they have to cross over like a literal creek of human waste, to get to her house, kind of thing. And I kind of went like, oh, probably not the best idea to be wearing the heels that she's wearing when she's doing this, but I mean, she made it, so that's cool. But then also I was kind of like, like you said, it's like something that has to happen for the story kind of thing. But at the end, when the guy shows up, I looked over at Matt. I was like, this guy just like is on that kind of terms with her. He just like walks in the front door of her house. Like he doesn't even know if she's decent.
Who? Talking about
the scene guy, the boyfriend guy.
Oh, well, I think they're like they live together, no? Or
I didn't think so, but maybe he doesn't even know what she does for a living.
Oh,
at the beginning, he's asking her. He says, like, "What do you do?"
Oh,
or why? No, he says, "Why won't you tell me what you do for a living?" He says, "If you told me where you worked, I promise you, I'd bring you fruit every day."
Oh,
he's so in love with her.
Yeah,
but
so maybe
she doesn't
they're
want
not.
to. Yeah,
they don't live together. So.
Yeah, she's embarrassed to tell him what she does.
Yeah, I can see that. But
I mean, obviously he has to find them. It's economy of storytelling and such. But it just shocked me. I was like, "Geez, guy's just gonna walk right in, huh?"
Yeah, there was a few interesting things like the stuff that like it's a bit extreme. You get the point, but it's a bit over the top. Like there's the I'm seeing on IMDb. There's one of the still frames here. Is the moment when the dove is killed, and then they pick it up and they walk with it. It's kind of like symbolizing peace you know, and all
You
that,
police
and it's like
have
you
killed
killed
the
peace, you killed the peace, and then also like later in the movie, there's the guy is the guy in the rural area
Yeah.
that the communists, the former
mountaintops or
student,
whatever.
like he stumbles onto this family and he eats in their home, and then like he tries to convince the dad to join the revolution, and then there's the whole plot of like how the dad's going to end up joining the revolution even though he's reluctant. Is like once he loses his family or something, like, or at least like I think some of his kids die from the bombing, that's when he kind of picks up arms and joins it. And that's like the last sequence in the movie when they like off and fighting. But which again felt a bit, plot wise, felt a bit forced, but it's gonna be for propaganda is always gonna be slightly forced to some degree, but it's well intended as far as like story wise, trying to get the point across. um I don't know, what about you, Matt, like as far as like the, you know, your favorite moment vignettes or
I think I yeah, my favorite one is probably still Enrique's story, which is the second to last storyline.
That's my
I
favorite
think
too.
I think that's the one that kind of struck me as being first of all, I think Enrique just is the most fleshed out character, or the most fleshed out protagonist. Yeah, the most fleshed out character that was portrayed in the film.
is that
Um,
the student?
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, okay, cool.
I also felt like that sequence was dealt with in a, I guess, a more economical way. I mean, there didn't seem to be any or as much fat that I felt could have been trimmed off of certain places, and I also didn't feel like there were many places where they uh, cut something short that should have, where they should have spent more time. Like the first sequence with Maria, I actually think they probably could have gotten to her a little bit faster. I mean, there's actually,
Yeah.
well, I mean, almost the entire first half of her story, she's not even in it, or her, anthology, she's not really in it. But yeah, the Enrique story, I think was overall structured the best, and we had the clearest and best uh, mapped out beginning, middle, and end, uh, and also some of the most incredible camera work in the entire movie. But that's a bit of an aside there. But yeah, that sequence definitely stood out to me more than the others.
Yeah, the one that I forgot all about that I liked this time was the old man in the crop
Sugarcane.
field, the sugarcane thing.
I like
Yeah,
that one too.
yeah, there's something about that, like the whole generational thing that like he wanted to pass it on to his kids, but now it's going to be taken away from him, and and then they burn it. There's something about that. That's definitely, I feel like, very sympathetic, that aspect of it, as far as like
I
sympathetic characters.
I don't know why I kept focusing on little things, but as we were watching that one, I it gets to the point where the father sends his kids away for tells them they got a short day and gives them a little bit of money, and they go off into the what you could call the town. I mean, it's still not very much of a town, but they go to like a little place, like a little probably a bar or eatery or something like that, a little spot, and start playing some music on an old jukebox. And I like the camera is really interesting on that one little shot because it shows it's either shooting through the side, I think, of the jukebox and then the front or something, because it's a big glass box with a curved front or something. And the daughter puts some music on, and she's got her hands pressed up against the jukebox, and I was just thinking, like, if I was the owner of this establishment, I'm like, girl, nobody wants your grubby fingers all over that thing. Like, do you know how much that thing costs? Probably, like, it's probably more than your whole farm, you know. But yeah, I don't know why I was focusing on that. I was just like, wow,
Yeah.
get your hands off that jukebox, you dirty little farmer.
What about like favorite shots?
For me, the two obvious ones are the famous party one that goes down into the pool, and the obviously the oneers are my favorites. That one and the the big climactic one that ends the Enrique's story, the one about the college students and the where it goes up into the cigar factory and then like out across the street and everything like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a shot that's like that just doesn't work on so many levels, yet you don't give a shit because it's so impressive that you'll forget anything in that shot. Like the shakiness, the fakeness, the timing of how like they open the flag just at the right time for it to be when the camera. It's all so staged and so fake, but you don't care.
And so triumphant.
Yeah, it's so impressive, and then like you can see the wires. It's like I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. This is cool. I don't care. You know.
Yeah.
If it was today's technology, they could probably like make the wires disappear or something. But it's like it doesn't matter. This is just amazing. I will forego my suspension of disbelief.
There was another Matt. You might remember, maybe you don't. I don't know. There was something less bombastic and less maybe less impressive, I don't know, but there was something else in the movie during one of the quieter scenes, probably an exterior or something, and I remember like going, oh, look at that, or something like that. I think someone's standing silhouetted against the sky or something. I can't remember now, but there was something that jumped out at me, and now I can't remember what it was.
I think we might be talking. You might be talking about the same image that I had in my mind. If it's toward the end, Mariano. That actually, the shot that I had in my mind was actually one of the less impressive in terms of camera moves. But after Mariano's son is killed in the bombing raid, the moment that he says to his family that he has to go and join, the camera move is actually just pretty much a lateral dolly move across the frame, but it's definitely an infrared shot, and it's like an atomic sky behind them.
Yeah,
and they're basically shot in silhouette in front of this really contrasty, cloudy, beautiful sky with just a little bit of grass in the foreground, giving the image a bit more depth and everything. And that's definitely one of those images that definitely like trailer shot or poster shot, kind of.
Isn't that shot? Isn't there like at least a portion of it where his upper torso, certainly his face, is completely in shadow, like in silhouette, like you can't really see any features of his face at all?
You might be talking about two different shots, but
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but I saw it in the stills in IMDb. I think the shot you're talking about is there, but yes, they actually do a couple of those. They do some with the old man and his horse, some silhouettes, like low angle shooting up like at the sky, and it's those are really like effective shots. So you're saying those were like infrared?
Yeah, a lot of definitely a lot of the sugarcane fields with Pablo, and a lot of the the last sequence with Mariano were infrared. Not a whole lot in the first and third storylines, but a lot of the intro, like the aerial shots and the setup to the film before they really get into the first storyline, were infrared.
Here it is, Matt. This is probably what Gil was just talking about. As soon as he said that, I went to go click on them because they have about 80 pictures on IMDb. Yes, I totally love the shot you're talking about at the end. I very much remember that one, where he says goodbye to his family and all that stuff. But I think I was confusing it, at least when I was talking about that last part, with what Gil was just mentioning with the old man, because I was clicking through, and sure enough, that the image I was thinking of at the end here is the old man with his little straw hat, and then he's got his I don't know what that was, like a mule. Or I don't think it was a horse, maybe a mule,
a skinny horse,
maybe a very malnourished horse. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, he his steed is there with him, and he's like almost entirely in silhouette.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Kind of a similar shot.
It's pretty. It's very pretty.
Yeah, also very interesting. A lot of Dutch angles in the movie. It kind of feeds into, like, if you're gonna shoot something a lot of handheld, then you can kind of like do a lot of Dutch and just keep it consistent throughout the movie.
One of the things Matt was mentioning, the whole sequence with Enrique as the college student who kind of gets radicalized, or whatever you want to call it. That whole story, I think they had excellent use of their settings, the college campus, the buildings, just the weird like rooftop that he's on, that where he almost kills somebody and stuff. I mean, there's just fascinating stuff to put in front of the camera.
Yeah. Also, there's I noticed, like, in the bar scene, one of the photos, you can see the bar, it's slit from below. Wonder if Kubrick kind of borrowed that for The Shining. Not that it's like it's an uncommon. We've done it once. The idea of like just trying to light from below.
Yeah.
As a light source. Is there anything else we haven't covered?
If you get a chance to see it, you should watch it.
We definitely warmly. I guess that's a good question. We didn't cover that in the early part. I can only assume there's many people that would watch this and is like, no, I don't get this. This is like black and white.
It's not for
everybody. This like for movie buffs, like for like film students, movie buffs. I'm not sure if the everyday person would appreciate it, like because it is a very unorthodox movie. It's like a mockumentary of sorts. Almost borderline, like it's not shot like a traditional movie. The pacing, like you said, is super slow. Like I can see that being a tough swallow for, like, most people don't like, oh, who cares, the camera's flying, like whatever. It's like that doesn't register with most people. So
it's not the most accessible movie ever made, that's for sure. But I mean, if you can handle foreign films and subtitles, and are interested in beautiful camera work.
I saw something. It was like a video on, like a short video or something, with like Spielberg. At some point, he said like about his struggle of showing, and this was probably years ago, struggling to show movies to his kids, is because the first question they have, like, is this movie black and white? Because if it is, we don't want to watch it. Yeah. And he would be like, well, let's watch the first 10 minutes. And after the first 10 minutes, let me know if you want to keep watching it or stop. And he says he almost always like they're in after 10 minutes. But like it's the hump to get over. Is like, is it a black and white movie? Like, I don't know if I want to sit through a black and white movie. I also saw a documentary about it's on Netflix, remembering Gene Wilder. and there was like he was saying, like, Mel Brooks was saying something about, like, when they were pitching the movie and stuff, it was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's because I think one studio passed on it, and another studio said, like, yeah, we're all in. We love this idea. This is great. And as they're walking out the door, like literally just as they're closing the door, it's like, oh, and by the way, we're shooting in black and white because of the original Frankenstein. Bye. And they close the door. And they're literally, like, executives, like, running down the hallway to catch them. It's like, what? Black and white? But they were able to convince them.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll definitely just echo what you guys said. It's not Dark City in that everybody enjoys it, once they sit down and take my advice and watch it. It's more of a niche, but yeah. I mean, I don't even necessarily think that you need to be a film nerd, just kind of an art nerd in general. I mean, if
That's a good point.
yeah.
Let's say if you're a photography enthusiast, you should watch this movie. And I think that's actually more common than film enthusiasts to some degree. Like, as far as, like, if you appreciate good photography, this is essentially like photography in motion.
Yeah. Right.
I was gonna say, someday we should do something really. I guess we should just do The Matrix. But, like, as soon as Matt said Dark City, I was like, well, I can think of one movie that's more accessible than Dark City, and it's very similar as The Matrix.
Yeah.